we have absolutely a fabulous opportunity with the blessings of ownership, you know, of our facility, of our company, to create, you know, these environments where we can do networking and present truly some of the finest speakers, you know, either locally or in Jeff's case, out of state from Texas. And so we look forward to this being an ongoing event because we believe wholeheartedly that relationships are the most important thing that we can offer each other, really and truly. It's certainly not about a shortage of clients, because there's plenty to go around, but we need you, we want to work with you, and we're hoping that you'll feel the same way as you get to know us. With that being said, what I'd like to do now, please, is have your attention, and I'd like you to meet Jeff Cope. And Jeff and I met not too terribly long ago at a professionals weekend out of state and hit it off really well. Besides the fact that, you know, we have different opinions on basketball teams, we still have been able to forge a very, very nice rapport with each other. And he certainly has my respect as a professional. He works with some of the very finest treatment centers, does interventions nationally, and is very busy out here in California. And so when I heard that, I thought, you know, I've got a whole lot of people that need to meet you. So he brings a unique perspective to the field of intervention, some humor, and he's smart, and just a pleasure to know. And so Jeff, if you would please.
The name of my company's called Healing Sea Turtle. I wasn't crazy enough to name it after myself. So when I went to treatment, I got sober. My wife wrote me a letter the first week I was in treatment. And she wrote me this letter that said, "You're not going back to Wall Street." I was an 18-year Wall Street executive, specialized in high-end finance for families above 10 million. And she said, I said, "But you don't understand, I'm one of 50 people in the world that have a set of licenses that every firm has to hire. You have to have somebody like me inside of your firm." She goes, "Not going back." I thought she was nuts. I thought she had started drinking like I was, and lo and behold, she hadn't. But I'd come home and I'd always complained about how treatment was done. And I didn't like, even though I was sober, I thought there was a lot of things that could be changed. And I thought that treatment didn't need to be degrading, humiliating. Treatment doesn't need to be about screaming at the addict all the time. We beat ourselves up as addicts more than any person in the world. I don't need somebody else needing me to go to EMDR therapy after I leave treatment. So what I realized, one, I didn't know what EMDR meant coming out of treatment, but I went to a place that I believe saved my life. There is no other treatment center I should have gone to in the world. My family had the right idea. It was right for me. I don't know that it's right for everyone. And I haven't put, until recently, a single client there, and I really didn't have a choice where this person was going. But we worked out some of my own personal issues probably with that center, and we're having a good relationship now. But when we were laying in bed and she kept saying, "You're not going back to finance, and you're not going back to finance," and I had gotten flown to New York to interview with Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan. And I was sitting in there, and it was supposed to be the final interview. I was going to be National Director of Trust and Estate Planning. And Jamie walks in, he says, "Jeff, I know I'm supposed to hire you today. I'm in a hurry. My gut tells me there's a different plan for your life. I wish you luck." That's how the interview ended. I said, "Did my damn wife tell you to say this?" I was so mad. Walked out, got on the plane, was flying home. My phone was kind of going nuts, didn't know who the number was. And during the time after I left treatment, I spent that time, I was a baseball player in college, thought I wanted to be a pro athlete at one time, thought I had the skills even. But it's a long way between being a star athlete in Texas high school baseball to going to Division I to play, and then that next step even to go to rookie baseball is a totally different world. And everybody's good. Everybody has special talents. So we had to move through it, and when I realized that that wasn't me, and I started in finance, what I came back to do, go back one, what I went back to do, and we'll finish this up and start, is I went to finance, and so what they came back and showed me through that was I could volunteer, I could teach Little League, I could show guys how to throw, how to hit, but I wasn't for the little kids. I needed to be guys that could understand the discipline of the game because I just didn't have the patience for the fun, to make it fun. So this family, I coached their son on some things, and they called me and they said, our other son's got a problem, he needs to go to treatment. Would you mind coming to talk to him about going to treatment? That was case number one we worked on. It took 3 days to do an intervention on him. I called a buddy of mine, said, hey, tell me how to be an interventionist in 30 minutes. He laughed, he showed me how. I didn't know about not making deals and a lot of the things that we don't do as interventionists now. But that was case number one. My wife, inside of her dream, had said that we would do, that this vision, she says, from God she got, that it took, I was going to have to do 5 for free before we ever got paid for the first one. We did our first 5, number 6 paid. She told me that she kind of had this whole prophecy of how this thing worked, but the name, she was laying in bed and she said that I was a master scuba diver. The first dive, and it's on the brochure that'll come out. I love scuba diving. Finance afforded me a lot of trips all over the country. And I was able to dive, and the first animal I saw in the very first dive I ever did was a sea turtle. I thought, how cool. How cool is that animal? How graceful, how it takes to survive. Yet that's what it takes for an addict. The perseverance of a sea turtle to go back to its beach 5 years later after it's born, to re-nest in the same hole, is the same effort that it takes us in recovery to survive. The odds of it ever returning to that beach are slim. Sounds a lot like treatment. The will, the shell, is the addict's shell of their addiction. We escape into our shell. The only way we ever make progress is to stick our neck out. And that's how, so she's laying there. I have a sea turtle tattooed on my back. We thought we needed to have something done because when I was 30, I thought, I'm gonna get a tattoo. I'm gonna make my family be shocked because I'm just what everybody would consider, I have this perfect, great life. And although I was the addict, suffering in silence. And so when she ended up saying the name needed to be HEAL, helping every addict live, is what HEAL stands for. Because I will tell my families, this is not about 90 meetings in 90 days. This is not about eat, drink, and sleep. And I'm sorry if that's how you say things, but I don't need 24/7 to be dealing with my addiction. I'm a hardcore, of the worst variety, alcoholic. Never touched a single drug. But the truth of it is, I'm just like that meth addict having to hit it in the neck because I had to hit that bottle. And so there was no difference between me and them. What the truth was is that was the drug that chose me. That was what my shell. That was my way to escape. And so when we told our families that my sponsor, the guy that was at my treatment center, some of y'all may know Chris Raymer, his day one was my day one. His brother became my sponsor. My life was kind of set on a different course. I went to a treatment center called Mark Houston. Pretty hardcore. I was a first-time Wall Street executive that was used to being pampered, and I went there. My family decided to take me there. We do interventions because of everything my family screwed up in the middle of mine, and what not to do. Because one thing I won't do is I won't lie to the addict. We'll never lie. And we may take the truth and bend it all the way around, but I can still find the truth in it, but I'm never gonna lie to them. And so the name HEAL came that we need to teach you how to live inside of your addiction. Live as an addict, because I will be an addict till the day I die. And I'm so grateful that I am, because God gave me the disease versus somebody else in my family so that I would be able to carry the message, and I was strong enough to handle it. But when we look at our life and how it came, you know, I would not be here today if my wife had not have relapsed twice. with 2 prior marriages, to 2 prior addicts. I always say, what's wrong with her? I'm the good one. But we came to understand, and this is what we'll go through today, is are we treating really the right people? So as we know, now that this is up and working, addiction lies. And it lies so well. Those of you who have met my wife and know, she's the most beautiful lady I could ever imagine getting to be married to. I cannot imagine that she wanted to marry me, yet I've known her since the 4th grade. The first girl I kissed was her best friend in front of her at the by the Pac-Man machine at the skating rink. And yet, we didn't see each other for 20 years. She'd gone her way, I'd gone my way. She'd been married to a man for 14 years. He was a meth addict. She found out after they graduated college. That was the kid's biological father. And she had divorced him after 14 years of marriage. And she sought a little help through that, not a whole lot. The second guy she got married to, for all of, you'll understand why after this 7 days, she thought she'd done a background check, owned a nice company there in the town she lived in. Turned out that he was a dealer of heroin. And she walked out to get something. She heard a noise in the front yard and went to get something out of her car that she'd forgotten. And he pulled a gun on her in the middle of a deal. She packed the kids up and left. Then she comes and sees the guy on Facebook. We started talking because it was our 20-year reunion coming up. The guy she'd known her whole life, and we started dating. And thought, I'm gonna marry this great guy that I've known my whole life, and I trust him, I know his family, we went to church together, our families sit in church together. But my addiction lies so well that it believes that I'm Bradley Cooper. She believes, it lies to me. It makes me believe I'm Bradley Cooper in active addiction. It lies to her because she's so pretty she thought she was marrying Bradley Cooper. Yet she married me. And I don't think we look anything alike. So we started having this conversation about Bradley Cooper forever. Because somebody said, oh, you look like that guy from The Hangover, because I promise you I'm not normally dressed like this. Normally, the Wall Street suit and tie days are over. I'm jeans and t-shirts, boots. But that was the picture. That's how well our addiction lies, and our family buys into it. And they buy into it so well, they continue to make movies after us. So, how do we stop the lies? Intervention, family advocate. When we go through all of this, what we end up seeing is, I used to sell in finance. I was a trust and estate planner. I spent a lot of time going through these complicated families and seeing, we got Johnny over here doing this drug, or we got somebody over here doing this, or we got to cut them out of the will and the trust. And I was the trust planner that came up with this idea nationally of how to design trust for addicts. Mind you, I was still actively drinking at that time. Of how to make them test weekly to get their draw from the trust. And so we would do all of these great things, yet most of the actions inside of a trust and estate plan, you have to see the person die before you ever get to realize that the trust worked, before the designs worked. Then I used to sell death. Now I sell life, because it's the same people. It's the same issues. Interventionists and clinicians have kind of gone at each other, whether one should be licensed, what shouldn't be licensed. And the truth of it is, we've got to look at each other as the same team. We're fighting a disease that does not play fair. It does not play nice. You need the interventionist to sometimes step in and not be the counselor. We get to say things most clinicians would love to get to say to their client, but we've got to do it carefully. And that's the difference here. A lot of interventionists are viewed as cowboys. They walk in and they'll say they think they're Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday, and they go through and you think that they're gunslingers. And yes, there are amazing stories that go on in interventions. That's what everybody asks when you write a book. But the truth of it is, it's the illness. It's, yes, these stories are coming because of the illness. Yes, these people are hurting because of what's going on. What they have to see is there is no such thing as true bottom for an addict other than death. My job is to bring a controlled bottom to them. Interventionists right now are also having this problem in the industry right now. What we see is, you'll see some people charge $500 per day, which I'm still trying to figure out how they do that, up to $20,000, $30,000 is out there now. What we've seen is what are you getting for what you're doing? The concern I have is that we have the ability in that room to create trauma. And that trauma can be lasting, even worse than the addiction itself. So you have to be very careful as to how you approach things. You have to learn to meet clients where they're at. My own family lied to me during my intervention to get me to come there. It took me 6 months to forgive the lie. I was sober long before I forgave their lie. And I still occasionally will remind them about the lie. But they understand that it's coming from a safe place, but they had to see that they did not help by saying that lie. And we go through all of these people, and you know, we're not a 50-minute, I love Ken, Ken's a good friend, so, but I'm going to bash Ken for a second. We're not A&E, it doesn't happen in 50 minutes. I hope it happens in a lot less most cases. But what they take out of the TV show, there's a lot of work that happens long before we ever get there. We're not Dr. Phil, you just need to get over it. I mean, Dr. Phil does some great work, and I love when he has addiction on there because my phone starts ringing. I love the treatment centers that he uses because he does seek some counsel, some great treatment centers around the country. Some of you all have worked with some of his clients, and you all know those clients are difficult. Those people are probably not the normal client you're going to see in your treatment center. They do usually need somebody like us in those cases, but we're not there to do that. And that, what he does on that show, I considered that room, because we've been asked to be on the show, and we've been asked to be on a couple of different ones, and we've said we won't be on that show for one reason. I want plausible deniability. Yes, I do have some law background. So I want what's said in there to stay in there. But I think what's in that room is sacred. I said you can film me going in. You can ask me all the questions you want. You can film me coming out. But what I do in there and the way I bring bottom to some of those people doesn't need to be put on national TV for everybody to see. Because if I'm not shedding tears with them, if I'm not in it with them, it doesn't happen. This week we've had an interesting week. Just last week, I have a case that is a gay Taiwanese male and meth addict, and I usually try and meet my clients where they're at, but one, I'm not obviously Taiwanese, and I was an alcoholic, not a meth addict, and I'm heterosexual, not homosexual. So I wasn't really going to be able to relate, so I brought somebody with me. That guy never talked, by the way, in this case. That client and I are great friends now, but he decided not to trust the process after a year we've been in this case. He decided to go out, came here to San Diego, chased down a friend. We've had to talk him all the way back in. But I told him on Saturday that I was willing to let him go. His family said, what? I said, I'm willing to let him go. You have to be. And so when the client heard that I was willing to step out, the client came to treatment. Because I want them to know I'm going to be there with them every step of the way. And that's what an interventionist should be doing. They need to be with their clients. You all are too busy. You've got between 15 and 30 clients in most treatment centers. You handle a caseload of 10, somewhere in there, most counselors do. And you don't have time to find out all the details that's going on with mommy and daddy at the back. That's what we do. When should an interventionist be called? I get that question every time from a treatment center. We constantly hear from the admissions department. How do we know? The truth of it is, when anyone besides the IP is calling your treatment center, because families are going to screw it up. They're going to say something they shouldn't. You know, we addicts might say, no, we're not going to treatment. Then what do? And have you wasted the one opportunity that addict trusted that family enough to get into that room? So, short of the IP calling, you need to bring the interventionist in. And I don't care who it is. There's a lot of great people out here in California. There's a lot of great people around the country, but they need to be brought in. But it needs to be presented to the family differently. And that's what I'm hearing people do, because this is where families run from an interventionist. I'm the very last person any family wants to call. You've admitted your house is so jacked up that you have to have somebody else come in and run your home for a second. And no family wants to do that. So why not do it this way? Why not say, you know, your case is pretty unique. Families love being that special, you know, terminally unique addict. But they want to know that they're unique. So I'm going to have this person call you. They specialize in this case. That's it. As an admissions department, that's where it needs to stop. One, you're not asking them to call us, because they never will. You haven't said the word intervention, because instantly they go to Dr. Phil or they go to the TV show and thinking that's what it looks like. What they don't understand is we're not really there as much for the IP as we're there for them, because their behavior has gotten us to the point that we're at today. So if you'll just say, I have somebody that wants to call, I have somebody that wants to help, and they know this kind of case specifically, they're going to pick up the phone. Your person's going to call me. We tell our treatment centers we work with, give me 4 to 6 hours. Because we do between 50 and 70 cases a year. I'm on the road a lot. 200 nights a year I'm gone. So we try and take every case that we can. If we can't, we have 2 other intervention firms that we refer to that it's just like us showing up. So we have a good working relationship. But don't hesitate to try and figure out if we're available. Let us be the ones to know if we need to move it. There's a guy that I work with that sometimes we'll say to the families, you know, I heard your case. This guy's a better fit for you. But your people aren't closing. They're chasing down these leads. They're chasing it down. They're trying to close these people to get them into treatment. And yet, it's not. Their phones are ringing off the hook at your treatment centers. Let us, because we have the time, we have the specialty in closing those things. We're already able to close an addict to get them to come into treatment. Surely we can close their families. That's a lot easier close for us. So this family that I also did last week was, the kid had been to 4 treatment centers. This was going to be his 4th treatment. The family had taken him 3 times. He'd flown on his family's private jet to treatment with the same pilot 3 times. I show up. It takes him usually 2 to 3 weeks to convince him to go to treatment again. His dad had been to treatment. His dad went to treatment at 36, and yet this kid was 21. Treatment doesn't look the same for a 36-year-old and a 21-year-old. They don't process the things the same. They don't act the same. This kid had never graduated college, let alone been president of one of the largest construction companies in the country. He's not his dad. So what we went in there, we were colorful, used a few adjectives when we woke him up. The family said I used more adjectives in 5 minutes than they've used in the 5 or 10 years, whatever it was they'd lived in that house. And the kid was out the door in under 10 minutes with me, hugging me, saying, I trust you, let's go. What music can we listen to on the way? And the family was saying, how the hell did you do that? I meet them where they're at. I don't ask them to meet me where I'm at. That's what families are messing up. That's what they're trying to do, is make their reality their child's or their spouse's or whomever they're working with. And the thing is that their reality is different because they're in active addiction and their mind's at some other place. We got to bring it to where they're at. Then we'll show them how to get there. Styles of intervention, the invitational model, the Johnson model, family systemic. The truth is, in all of these, a good interventionist will take a piece of each one of these and use them in that case. There is no one size fits all. I will tell you, except for the invitational model, I use the invitational almost every time on an adolescent. And if you work with adolescents, you understand why. They have to go with me. Mommy and daddy sign those releases. I'm putting them in the car no matter what. But wouldn't you rather me bringing in that client to you willingly, understanding? Don't they get better treatment? Don't they have buy-in quicker with you all? Don't they trust you all better? If I use the invitational model with them and let them see the reasoning behind what we're doing, I'm not going to conquer the world with them, but what I am going to do is have them say the word yes or okay. And that starts dropping part of those issues with them. I've worked with this family over the last year. I've done 4 people inside of that family. I've done mom, dad, and cousin. Mom calls me because we knew the daughter was an addict a long time ago. And they didn't want to, she participated in mom and dad's intervention. And what we kept saying to them was, this is a problem inside of your family, but your daughter is showing me every sign that it's not just a little weed, it's not just an occasional Xanax. There's some heavy usage going on in here. And she goes, well, how do you know? I said, well, when you get recovery, you'll understand, but it's a secret handshake we have afterwards. And I know what she's using. No, you don't. I said, well, then let's UA test her. Well, she UA. I said, no, I want a hair sample. Because if you're administering the UA, mommy and daddy, you probably are doing it wrong. Or if you buy it at Walmart, they're not always the most accurate. So let's do a hair sample. The best $200 you'll ever spend. No. Well, the daughter told her therapist what she was using. Mom calls me. I'm asking some questions. She turns to the daughter, and I can hear the daughter in the background. She's answering. So the daughter wants to kind of go to treatment in her own little way at 16. Doesn't want to leave her boyfriend and all of her friends at school. But I said, you know what? Put your daughter on the phone. She knows me. And I need you to leave the room. The laundry list of drugs that were used, she became the single largest addict in terms of drug use that I've taken to treatment. At 16, she started using at 8. When we went through everything that she had in her system, I'm going, she goes, now you can't tell my mom. I said, well, you're a minor. I'll tell her what I need her to know. But I'm going to let somebody know all of this. So I get on the phone with the treatment center, tell them what we got. And lo and behold, she shows up at the airport. The family knows me. The girl walks up, hugs me, says, I'm glad it's you taking me and nobody else. And that was the day American Airlines lost their computer reservation system. So what was supposed to arrive at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we arrived at midnight. She started detoxing an hour after we walked through security. One of the worst detoxes I've ever seen on set so quick. We did everything in the world. I was buying every ounce of time we could. Fortunately, we were able to get her there. She got there. Of course, she wanted to leave the day one. But what we were able to do was show her this was her idea. She agreed to it. She wanted to come. She wanted help. She just didn't want it the way we were offering it. But we had to show her the way we were offering it was the way out. The movie Flight does an incredible story because of the ending. Not because of everything in the beginning, because we all know working in treatment what that's going to be, and we know the minute that door's banging what's going to happen. But when he uses the word freedom and sitting in prison, sorry, I just read it for those of y'all that haven't seen it, but sitting in prison and describing the word freedom, that had to be somebody that was in recovery and had recovered and knew what it meant to say those words before he did. I was reading an article on him the other day talking about that movie, and he said he spent hours talking with addicts to understand what that moment of freedom was like. I said, it's not a moment of freedom, it's a lifetime. When you do it right and you live by the principles on a daily basis. Way too often I hear family, just go fix him. We're not broke. My wife will say, please don't say that phrase to Jeff. He will come unglued. I do. There's a few things with my families I will stand on. I'm not broke. If your child had cancer, if your child had diabetes, if your husband has heart disease, are you going to tell him you're broke? Go fix it? You're going to tie a red ribbon around the tree or whatever. Everybody's going to have a march. But us addicts, nobody gives a shit. We chose. We chose this. I can tell you, none of us in recovery sit down in kindergarten when you're writing down what you want to be when you grow up in life. And none of us wrote heroin addict. None of us wrote we wanted to be the prostitute on the street corner doing with John's so we could hit that score that night. None of us wrote they wanted to lose a Wall Street career. We might have written down we wanted to be a doctor, a teacher. Hell, we might have even written down we wanted to be a trash man. But none of us wrote drug addict. That's what our families aren't getting. That's why these models, the family systemic, that's where we bring that in. We have them understand what it should look like. The Johnson model, 90% of the cases are used that way. But initially I agree that that's the way that works to get us in the door. What I think though we have to do is I always have to hear the words yes, or at least okay, or even maybe I'll take once in a while if it's been a long time in there. Or I'll think about it. But the family systemic, I believe, really is what we're after in the end. We are trying to have these families come to the point that they understand. Now, we've gotten through the intervention, we've done all of this. The problem is, current ways most families have been treated, they end up saying, okay, we go to counseling, we do IOP, we go to 30, 60, 90 days of inpatient residential treatment. Heck, even some places will take you for a year. Yet relapse still happens. That's the scary part to me. Relapse is still happening, yet I believe everybody in here is capable of treating every addict and having them sober for life. There's none of you that do this job because you love the money and you love the hours. I get phone calls at 3 in the morning. I love those. I prefer to have the 3 o'clock in the morning phone call to the 3 in the afternoon. 3 in the afternoon shopping me, 3 in the morning in a panic. So relapse still happens. So is it possible that we've identified the wrong client? Is it possible that we're not treating the proper people? Is it possible that this disease happens not just because the addict is using, because the family's sicker than we are? I've made my family so sick they buy my bullshit. Remember, they believe I'm Bradley Cooper. They buy everything I say. The intervention is not just for the IP. The addicts of the family are sicker than most of us, and they continue to enable the private jet 3 times. We actually did it 4 because I wrote in it the other day, and it was nice. It was a convenient way to get to treatment. But sometimes kids need to take a Greyhound bus. I needed to not go sit on a beach to go to treatment. I needed to go to rattlesnake-infested a piece of hell to wake me up. I'd spent too much of my time being pampered. That's what we're not identifying for these families. We're not showing them because they said, go fix Junior, and then they sit back and go, whoo, we're done. He's gone. Jeff did a great job. We almost should pay you extra. You made that easy. What they don't know is we do get paid all up front for one reason. Because we're about to bring them the missing piece. We take on a case, our cases last, like I said, on average 15 months. And what we've seen through these cases is that they have to feel it. We do let them have the first night to take a breath. The unique thing about our firm, and a lot of firms do this, but I think where it becomes a different perspective from us, is remember I said that my wife, I used to say she's not in recovery. Yes, she is. Al-Anon is recovery. My wife is in recovery, especially from my craft, but hers as well. She had to learn what she was doing was just as bad. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for my wife running interference for me, I'd be dead, or in handcuffs, or in prison, or something. But I wouldn't be right here in front of you all, because she stopped them from saying, have you used today? My dad, I love him to death, and he knows I tell the story and he hates it when I do. My dad said, Dietrich, you should withhold sex from him to make him go to his meetings at night. How well do you think that worked? Once again, I'm Bradley Cooper, so she couldn't say no to me. But in the end, what we did was we showed my dad, even in my recovery, I was 6 months, I'd been sober a year. Working in treatment, I'd been sober 18 months, working in treatment for 6, and I had my first case not go to treatment. Right then. She pulled a gun on me, stuck it down my face the minute I walked in the door. Things didn't go so well. And I knew in the back of my mind she'd go if I ever got a chance to talk, but I never got a chance to talk that day. My dad on the way home, I don't want to talk to anybody, because my real disease was perfection and failure, not alcohol. I was the guy that you would see the finish line, and right before I'd get there and everybody pat him on the back, I'd move the line. So it looked like I was achieving this great life, but in truth, I was doing nothing but in my own mind failing. That's a lot of your addicts that you work with, that they're trying so hard that they never get to enjoy anything. So what we've tried to do is show them. So what I did was, in my own family, my dad left me this message. Hey Jeff, sorry that it didn't go well today. I hope you learned something that you'll do better, you'll be able to use and do better the next time. I didn't hear it when he first played it, and I can't believe it. Yeah. My wife started crying in the car. She heard the story. She heard what he said. I look over, what's wrong with you? And I said, I'm the one that's having a bad day right now. And once again, because it's all about me, because I'm the addict. And she said, I need you to replay that message. That message is still on my phone today. But I heard what he said. The next day, which I couldn't have done in active addiction, I went and played the message for my dad. Showed him what life looked like for him to hear it. He started bawling the minute he heard it. I said, Dad, you remember that your son's an alcoholic, right? He goes, yeah, but you're recovered. I said, oh, you've learned a few words. And I said, do you realize what my real disease is? And he goes, I said, perfection and failure. And he goes, yes, I remember. Let me play this for you. And it just stopped him. Our families of our clients we work with have not heard their own words. That's what we're trying to do. Recovery protection versus relapse prevention. Relapse prevention is an act that's already occurred. Relapse has already occurred, but we spend so much time in treatment saying we got to prevent the relapse. Hell, let's protect the recovery. Let's protect what you all have done a magnificent job of getting them to this point. They're sober for at least probably the longest period of time they've ever been in their lives. How do we protect that outside of these four walls? It was a term coined by Mandy Baker. Mandy's a great friend of mine. Most of this is stolen from her. And she came up with the term recovery protection. We were sitting in a meeting. I said, I'm taking that and I'm going to use it in this presentation. But she goes through, from a clinician standpoint, if you really want to understand, you can go read her stuff, and I'll be happy to send anybody her PowerPoint on it. But she goes through Gorski's, 35, 36 things, whatever it is that he has to identify relapse, and yet it's only the bottom 3 that we really need to be aware of. People don't want all 35 or 36 things. Us in active addiction are kind of simple-minded people. We like things short and condensed. Our attention span, we're really not ADD, we're OCD with ADD traits. We can focus on things that are short. 3 things. We're long relapse by the time we get to those last 3 things. I wish Gorski would change. I love what he does. I wish he'd put those last 3 to the first 3. Because the minute number 1 is done, we're on our way. My wife will look at me sometimes and say, "You haven't done your work today, have you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, you've been traveling so much and you're really kind of a pain to be around right now. So obviously you haven't meditated or done any of your work around some issues you're dealing with. So I need you to go do it." I hate that she works with me because she understands it. And sometimes I just like to be an addict, but she doesn't let me get a waller in my stuff. But how great would it be if our families understood? Instead of saying, "Have you used today?" they said to him, "Have you done your work?" That's so much kinder, gentler, so much more non-threatening. Yet, they spend their time. Recovery protection. This is where it's got to come back into you all that are in private practice. So much of it comes from you all. You identify this. And it's not necessarily you have the IP in your, what we always have identified as the IP in your office, but you have that family member in your office and they're sitting there saying, "God, I wish he could quit using. If he could quit using life, it'd be great." Really? Because we're going to find something else as addicts to do. It's not the substance, it's something else. So what we try and do is redirect our families. The minute they become clients of ours, we make sure they paid us all up front because I'm about to become their nightmare. Because I tell them, "You're going to sign this contract, and by the way, you better read the fine print because it says that you're going to enter counseling on a weekly session, and your counselor is not going to report to anybody but me. And by the way, if you don't have a counselor, I'm going to be the one to pick it. And more than likely, I'm going to ask for a second opinion. If you have a current counselor and you didn't come to me from them, I'm going to ask you to leave your current counselor. Because something may not be working, and I need to hear a different set of ears. Because most of the people, and I did not understand this, and those of y'all that are master level therapists, you understand this, but when you're going to school, you end up at this road, and the road makes a Y, and it says you either go to family counseling, or you go over here to addiction. Now think about that. Which family counselor is not dealing with addiction? Why they deviate that at school? Don't know. That's not for me. That's for somebody else, much higher pay grade. But what I looked at is these families. The counselors, one counselor I heard say to a friend of mine, some of y'all know Jeannie Griffin, and Jeannie was telling me, she goes, "Jeff, these families are so sick, but these counselors don't want to deal with addiction. Yet they're working in family counseling. How are they not?" Of some level, because addiction covers more than just drugs and alcohol now. Eating, all the process addictions that we can look at. So they're going to deal with some level of addiction in their practice. So what we try and do is make sure that they're seeing the properly trained counselor, which you all, by working in this field, understand how some therapists approach addiction and how, if praying about it would have gotten me sober, I'd have been sober 10 years before I was. Sometimes they see their pastor, their family friend. I'm sorry. I mean, you got to do more than pray. It requires action. What does it say in the book? We got to take action. It shows you something to do, then you got to take action. Well, hell, sitting around talking about it all day is no action being taken. Let's see what you're gonna do. So I push my families into counseling. I push my families into Al-Anon. And when my wife does not believe they're attending Al-Anons, we treat them just like addicts. Because we're gonna ask, can we talk to your sponsor? So we can hear your BS. And when we don't believe that they're attending their meetings, we send them a sign-in sheet. The one thing that we know we're not treating in addiction, you all don't have time for. Families. The best treatment centers in the country, the best family programs in the country have 5 days. I went and sit through one the other day. It's the saddest event I've ever had. That's why this speech is the way it's being done now. I sit through the entire family program, walk out of there more depressed than any time I ever spent in treatment myself. Because these are some sick puppies. I can't divorce my child. I can't put them on the street. I can't let them fail. Well, hell, how are they doing with you already? They're on the street, they're using, they're sleeping at somebody's house, and oh, by the way, in some ways you failed and you have divorced them because you buried your head in the sand for this long not to do something before I showed up. We got to make some changes. And we know that relapse still happens in the best treatment environments. We're seeing 50 to 70% no relapse rate. But how do we get to the 92% that airline pilots and doctors have? Accountability. They have a hellacious accountability program. Their families also go through it. Their families are involved. We need to be putting that in with them. What we also need to be doing is showing them that we can't ask them to do 5 years. Most families can't afford it. The next study shows at 15 months at about an 85% no relapse rate if they stayed in active monitoring, active counseling, and active participation through all parties. Because anybody that's going to appear on the front row at your funeral, those are the people that need to be in treatment with you. My addicts love me because I say this line to them in the middle of the intervention. I'm putting your family in treatment. They're going to counseling. We're going to fix their jacked up behaviors that they do. And they all start laughing, saying nobody's ever been brave enough to say my family's as sick as I am. Okay, I'm here. But that's what we're seeing, a change to the industry. We're seeing more and more. The last thing I want to say on putting families into the treatment is there's one program that's just up the street from you all here. And it's kind of a plug for them, and it's not meant to be that way. But Bridge Recovery Program and On-Site, when you've got that codependent, and I'm going to be stereotypical here, mother, but I will tell you in my cases that I see, for young men, it's the dad is the problem. He's the codependent one. He's the one that allows the son to get away. In young men, it's always the dad, or at least 95% of it. So I need to send him, because the funny thing is they treat 2.8 members of each family once they send the first one there. Now 2.8, so they're treating multiple people inside of a family that need to get their recovery, because they need to break that codependence, because we're still going to be addicts whether they're there or not. I'm going to be an addict till the day I die. On my tombstone, my wife knows, and I mean, we paid for it already. It's going to be written, alcoholic. I've earned it. I've earned my stripes. It's going to have the word recovered written right beside it, because if you look in the big book, it says we recovered. But I'm going to have it put because I'm not ashamed. The Alcoholics Anonymous is meant, and that's what I hear my clients say all the time, because we do a lot of multiple relapse. Well, I'm not supposed to tell anybody about it. Oh, no. God, you've got this story mixed up. The anonymous part means that you don't tell what goes on in that room about others. Tell your story. Put it on Facebook. Have people hold you accountable. Have your employer know you're drunk. It's okay. They can't catch it. You're not contagious. Let them see what they can do. Their intervention is more than just a day. We have fun. We do love our job. I mean, I love what I get to do. I wake up every morning and just go, let's do this. And yet the one thing that I know comes from a man named Gary Fisher. And those of y'all that know Gary Fisher at CERT, he's a pretty amazing man. And Gary sit there one day and said to me, he goes, we're sitting in his office and Rick walks in, Gary's in there, Keith Fearman's in there, Stephanie's in there. We're all sitting around talking and we're laughing. And he goes, you know what your real job is, Jeff? To take bullets. He goes, you can sleep at night. You guys that do your job are kind of sick anyway. And I said, you're right. But he says, you're there to take a bullet, not only for the family, but for the IP. Sometimes you need to protect them from their family. And then sometimes we need to be put on the phone while the person's at treatment, and probably have the clinician portion with the license leave the room, and us have a little conversation with them and remind them of what bottom's going to look like for them, refocus them, and then have them come back in. But you're there to take bullets for the treatment center too. Be the bad guy. You can live with it at the end of the day. He's right. In all the cases we've worked, we have 2 cases that I will say that would not hug me right now. Would not say thank you for saving my life. One, he's in prison and will be probably till the day he dies, because he still blames me for, holding up the grocery store. I had the gun. And the other one is a lady that we worked on today and she's 62 years old and has brain damage. She doesn't realize to even know. But at that family program, I'll close with saying that I had the greatest experience sitting in that family program, because this one treatment center will bring me in and have me do a little of the Mark Houston, the way I went to treatment talk, which sometimes is colorful and it's direct. And they get to hear what it can look like. But we'll go in there. But they also introduce me and they will say, if this guy shows up at your house, you're not having a good day after you've left here. You're probably headed back to treatment. So I'm at this treatment. I've been through this family program. And those of y'all that know me, for me to be quiet for 5 days and not say a word and listen to all the sickness that I've heard, I'd rather have nails put through my eyes. But I did it, and this kid comes up to me, and I'd seen him a couple of times when I'd been to that treatment center, and he says, I need you to come with me, Jeff. I said, this ought to be good. Takes me over, introduces me to his wife, his mother, and his dad. And he said, if I ever, for some reason, relapse, this is who you need to call to come get me. Because I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid that he'll bring the truth, and I'm afraid that he'd let me die, because he cares enough about us to let us go through all those things. And so I couldn't have thought of any bigger compliment I've ever heard in my life from an addict. And his family goes, what is it that you do? And I said, well, I'm an interventionist, but really, I hate that title. I'm a communications specialist. My job in the end is to coordinate the communication between the treatment center, the counselors, the family, their therapist, make sure that a long-range plan. It is no different than in finance, because in finance, I wasn't the mutual fund designer, but I knew who was a good fund because I listened to all the things they could do. I saw their track records. Sounds like treatment center. I wasn't the insurance specialist. I wasn't the lawyer, but I knew enough about who did what. And to make sure that the family was hearing all the weird talk. I went from not talking at all like a clinician initially, not understanding, and I can call Vicki. Vicki worked with me initially on one of my early on cases that I did. I didn't understand a single damn word that came out of a clinician's mouth, and I'd have to go look it up. And yet now I can understand that language. And so I put it back to the language the family will understand and make sure that we're crossing it, because the last thing that you all need is to have to worry about the family while you're focusing on the client that's inpatient. So if I can focus on them and I can be moving the information because I find out something through the therapist that you all need to know, and vice versa that we need to address with the therapist and have that bomb dropped out of there, how much easier. I'll say a few of the treatment centers I work with, they never talk to the family, ever, until it's time to bring us all together, and they bring in what they call an intensive family day, where I go in with the family. And it's the first time mom, dad, who's ever all there, has communicated and stated what their problems are with each other, but done it in a healthy communication style. Yet myself and the therapist are the only two people in the room that know basically the whole story. And what we do is just try and deliver that. That's what intervention should look like. It's not A&E. I will tell you, I know Ken Seeley personally. I know John Southworth. Those guys don't do it like what it's shown on TV. You miss all. They're doing it exactly like what I just said. The guys that are, there's no way it can be done for $500. There's just no way. And I want the clinicians and the therapist and the interventionist, all of us to get on the same page, because it is the same team. We each need each other to do our jobs, not to fight against each other. Well, I wouldn't do that. If there's an argument and the family ever hears it, there's a problem. Because we need to settle the disagreement and how things should go in with each other before it's ever presented, because there only needs to be one voice coming back to that family. And that way that they know we're united. We may still disagree, but we agree on how we're going to tell the family. That's the idea of team. We try and put everybody on the same team. It's too hard any other way.